Hello dear cybernauts, you're welcome to another episode with Barrister Egbe Eyongakumbe on Sustainary Energy, where natural resources is brought very close to your knowledge. Now today we're going to talk about mining activities again, but in our episode of today we're going to talk about the three parts into which mining activities have been divided. To start with, we have the types of mining operations. We shall study the two types of mining operations under which we have artisanal mining and industrial mining. Also, we shall see the different categories or forms into which the mining exploitations are divided. In these different forms, we'll see the regime of quarries, and we'll also see the regime of geothermal or water deposits. Then lastly, we'll talk about the compulsory levies involved in mining activities. But for the purposes of proper understanding, I chose to talk about just parts 1 and 2 today. That means we'll be talking about the types of mining operations and the categories or forms of mining exploitation. So now in our first part, talking about the types of mining operations. What are these types of operations? We have artisanal mining operations and we have the industrial mining operations. Artisanal mining operations actually involve small scale mining operations. In these small scale mining operations, there is limited use of machinery, and for that reason we call it semi-mechanized mining operations also, because most times the activities are done by hand picking the minerals, or we use very little that we involve machinery to a very little extent. But in industrial mining operation, you will discover that there is heavy use of machinery. This means that we should be expecting more of the natural resources or of the mining products when we are involved with industrial mining operations. It's for this reason that artisanal mining operations is also referred to as small scale operations, because definitely with that hand picking and semi-mechanized method we will not get enough mineral ores, whichever one we're looking for. We shall be able to get just a small quantity of it, unlike when we are faced with industrial mining operations. This is because in industrial mining operations, being that the activities here are heavily mechanized, we will definitely understand that a machine will work more than a human being, and so the mining operation here is on a large scale. That's for the types of mining operations. Now we'll pass to the categories or the forms of mining exploitation. When we talk of the forms of mining exploitation, this brings us to look at the regimes involved in this exploitation of mineral ores. Now, under the forms, we have the regime of quarries and we have the regime of geothermal and water deposits. Talking about the regime of quarries, we have 4 different types under the regime of quarries. We have the artisanal quarries, we have the quarries for domestic use, and we have quarries of continuous or permanent exploitation, and lastly we have quarries of limited or non-permanent exploitation. That's for the regime of quarries. So remember, there are 4. Now we get to the other side, which has to do with the regime of geothermal and water deposits. In the regime of geothermal and water deposits, we have 3 basic types. We are either dealing with spring water, or we're dealing with mineral water, which is therapeutic, or we are dealing with thermomineral water. When we talk about thermomineral water, we should actually be averting our minds to hot springs and geysers. I mention hot springs and geysers here because hot springs and geysers are those kinds of waters that are ejected under very high temperatures from within the Earth's crust. So they are thrown out of the Earth's surface as tides, just the same way you will see a wave in the sea actually going very high up, throwing itself high up and coming down. That's the same image or the picture we will get if we were to see what happens to geysers. And geysers fall under thermo-mineral waters. They are waters that flow or eject themselves at a very high speed out of the Earth's crust. This is because basically they have passed through through environments which were involved in some sort of erosion at some point. Some sort of, yes, like volcanoes rocks, right? When you face something like the Boya Mountain, if you were to go there and you find water oozing out at some very high temperature, ejecting itself from any part of the Earth's crust around the Boya Mountain, one thing you'll be sure is that it has passed through volcanic rocks. And for the singular fact that it has passed through volcanic rocks, we will come to know that deep within the Earth's crust, most times those volcanic rocks take a lot of time to cool off. So they are still very, very hot, deep within. And it is for this reason that when waters pass through that place, they are boiled at some very high temperature and they eject themselves out into the environment under very high speed and high temperatures and go right up as tidal waters. That's why we call them thermal waters. In this case, where we have thermo-mineral waters, you will discover that it also has therapeutic properties because it has healing properties. That's why it gets that name therapeutic, from like the word therapy. So with these three different regimes of geothermal waters, you should understand that when we are faced with these particular categories of exploitation in mining activities, you will have spring water, mineral water, thermo-mineral waters. However, in this particular regime, we are privileged to get a chance to know about 3 office permits. Now, before you carry out any of such activities, or if you have to exploit water under any of these 3 subtopics which fall under the categories or forms, you will get to understand that they will give you 3 exploitation titles, amongst which you will get each one according to the stage you are dealing with. Now, if you are just at the research phase, what you will get is a prospection authorization. If you are done with carrying out your research and now you want to start extracting the water, you'll be given an exploitation authorization. If you are done with exploiting your water resource and you now want to bottle it, you'll be given a bottling authorization. So that's it for the 2 particular parts of mining activities which I chose to talk about today. So you were privileged to hear about the types of mining operations and the forms or categories of exploitation activities. Now, the last topic which I decided to talk about in another episode for purposes of focus is the compulsory levies. Under these compulsory levies, we shall talk about the actual fixed fees and the proportional fees to be paid under mining activities. You'll notice that this had to take a lot of our time, and it's only for someone who knows exactly what it means to sit down and talk about mining activities. However, for the purpose of those who asked for this class, I chose to bring it to your knowledge because in a previous episode, or in some previous episode, I had talked about the history and evolution of mining in Cameroon, and some people actually showed the desire of knowing what exactly is the kind of activities involved in mining. So in talking about the activities, I found it just normal to talk about the types of operations, the categories and forms of exploitation, and the compulsory levies. So hoping that I'll meet you in the next episode when I'll be talking about the compulsory levies. I hope that you got my class very clearly today, and that is going to be beneficial to you as a consultant or as a student. Hoping to meet you in my next episode. Have a wonderful day. Bye.